Hey, welcome to A Couple of Swanns. I'm Adam.
I'm Cortney.
And we're loosened up. This is our first podcast. And
Take 443.
Well, we've only done like 2 or 3 minutes 50 million times, but I think we're ready to rock and roll now. So as Cortney said, this is our first podcast. We're really excited about this. And while we were doing the 70 million takes of 30 seconds that we just did, I was thinking to myself, I was like, why did we want to do this in the first place? And at least for me, it's because this is going to allow us, you and I, to talk not be slam bam busy running. I don't know. I just think that that's going to be something that's cool. And hopefully you'll pour out like a lot of secrets that I've never heard, and we can do a deep dive and really process it together.
The nitty gritty, all the secrets shared.
I hope they're not insane though.
Oh, I don't think I even have any secrets. I'm so lame. The secrets are like,
you don't have to give them to me now.
No,
it'll just happen.
Like
eating
ice cream in the bathtub. Like, you know that.
You
brought it to me. Like, there's no secret.
Think of me as your medical professional.
Oh, good.
Therapist. And you can tell me anything.
Oh, I can't wait. This is going to be a blast.
Anything. Okay?
Thanks,
and I'll
Adam.
deal with it. What did you think about the first time that you saw me?
I thought you were short.
I know you've told other people this and me.
That's the first thing I thought. You were a really nice neighbor. So I moved from Cleveland to Chattanooga. I went through a divorce, and me and my 3 kids moved to Chattanooga. I really just honestly felt like the Lord was like, hey, it's time. I'd not thought about moving to Chattanooga for years. And every time I looked, everything was too expensive or it didn't work out or whatever. But I really wanted to put my kids in this private school. I was praying one day and I just felt like it was, hey, you need to, like, this really urgent feeling of you need to move to Chattanooga. And so I was like, God, if that's what I'm supposed to do, you've got to like line all these things up for me. And within like 24 hours, I went on Craigslist, immediately popped up this house that I just fell in love with. And I was like, this is where you're supposed to live. Like, I had this like heart moment, and I called them and I was like, wow, I have bad credit. There's no way they're going to accept me or whatever. Because I don't know if you've ever gone through a rough divorce, but if you have, sometimes things just get hairy. And so I just didn't have great credit. And so, but anyways, I ended up getting accepted to the house. The kids got accepted mid-year to a school. There were no co-parenting issues with moving. And so I was like, here we are. So I moved into this house, and my really cute, sweet neighbor came over and knocked on the door and was like, hey, just wanted to introduce myself. But I had this like double porch. So I guess so that it wasn't like that he didn't look like a serial killer, he stepped back and down. And so I thought he was like this really just small man. And I was like, oh, that was really sweet for him to come over.
I've never heard that before.
I told you
not
when
from
I met
me.
you.
No, not
From
about
anyone?
me specifically. I've never heard of anybody ever like misplacing someone for being like, you're 4'11" when they're not.
I know.
Like,
So Adam,
just because of steps, like you haven't figured out how to look at people if they're on a different surface.
Plane. I know. I don't know why. And so I was like, oh.
You're like looking off a mountain and you're like, look at those tiny,
but he was really
tiny
nice.
people down there. They must be 2 or 3 inches tall.
Yeah, depth perception, never been like a strength of mine. So so he was really nice. He gave me his business card.
That was nice.
And I looked ratchet. I'd been gardening that day, and I was like cleaning, and had just moved, and I was going on a trip the next day. And so I sent him like a picture off my phone, and I put my name and phone number on it because I wanted him to know I could clean up nice.
Here's where it's not catfishing, because
you saw me ratchet.
No,
so
catfish. I'm not talking about
catfish.
catfishing when it's like, hey, the way someone looks. But you started sending me things, and it was like you bungee jumping in like Nepal.
No,
But it was something where you'd been crying for 7 hours at the bungee jumping place, and someone pushed you off. But you sent it to me like you were this crazy outdoors person who went nuts and would. And
far from
the truth.
So I sent him these
I was
videos.
like, this chick gets after it. She's
wild.
Yeah.
And I'm not. So I kind of catfished you a little bit on that.
Yeah, it's mental, or what is it? What do you call that?
Yeah.
Not physical catfishing. It's
personality.
Like personality. No, it's more like I don't know.
Because we started talking. Like as soon as you left, you were like, "Hey, if you need help
Sparks
around
flew.
the house."
Sparks flew hard.
You said you got me a welcome to the neighborhood gift, and I was like, "Well, that's kind of sweet."
That's just because Sparks were flying.
Oh yeah. So I was like, when I get back from Mexico, I was going down for a work trip and taking my best friend with me, and so
whatever else she told me she was doing on there that was just.
Yeah.
So adventurous, you couldn't believe it. It's like fighting the cartels or something.
No, we had a bunch of adventurous things planned. Like we did do cliff jumping and we went like zip lining. This was like fresh first year being divorced, like trying to find who I was, whatever. And my friend is actually very adventurous. She skydives and all these things. And I don't. I actually can barely handle like kiddie roller coasters. And so I did these things with her, incredibly uncomfortable, but we videoed them. And so I sent them to him. And so you thought I was like so wild.
I was just
adventurous.
Like, wow. Yeah. I mean, because I had no, preconceptions about who you are or what you were or anything like that.
Really
so I just feel like that was just, maybe that's what you thought that guys were into because you've been married so young and everything.
Yeah.
And you're like, you have
dating.
you have to be so out there and really just constantly cliff jumping or whatever to
it worked.
Get a man. It did work. It did work. I mean, I don't think that that's the reason.
Yeah, you came around. You came.
Yeah, but it wasn't because of the adventure videos.
It wasn't.
Do you think that's what it was?
Well, surely by now you would be long gone because
no. I'm not talking about now, but back in the day, do you think that like how some guys hold up a fish in their profile and they're like, that'll get me the chick.
Well, that was my fish.
That was your fish.
Yeah, I was trying to impress you. Like maybe, I had all these kids.
This is the biggest bass you had, and you sent it over.
Yeah, I had all these kids and all this stuff, and I'm like, I want him to think I'm fun. Like, okay.
I get it.
So I'm fun, though. Not in an adventurous way.
You are. You're incredibly fun.
Yeah.
You really are.
So, but you were the sweetest neighbor, and I'm so bad with signals, I couldn't tell if you liked me or not.
I don't think I'm good at giving them either.
Well, you were like cooking me food and bringing it over.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's even me, it was definitely a mixture of
nice neighbor.
Well, I'm not one of those guys that's like, hey, I go pick up tons of chicks at the bar or anything. Like I was being nice to you because I wanted to be nice to you and you were my neighbor. Of course, I thought you were cute, but it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to, this will be my wife.
Oh, yeah. Probably not. Actually, if anything, several times you're like, I'm not looking for anything serious. So I just assumed that was
I think I was just playing it cool.
Yeah, playing it cool. And look, here you are, serious as it gets, 4 kids deep and all this.
I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's definitely a 7 serious. We're at a 7.
Yeah, we're definitely at a strong 7. So that's your trip.
So you thought I was short.
Yeah, but you weren't.
I know. Well, we're past now. We live in the same house now. You know that.
Yeah,
but
you're tall. You're at least 6
but
feet.
we had something there. As I said, sparks were
raging.
It was like a thunderstorm.
No, it was not. So for weeks we hung out. For weeks we hung out, and I would even do get ready videos. And I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna get ready. I'm gonna see my neighbor today. Like he offered to come over and like put up my curtains or whatever. And so we were just hanging out. There was like no kissing, no anything, no maybe flirting, I don't know. But there was nothing that made me, so I genuinely at a couple weeks in was like, I can't tell if you're just the nicest neighbor ever or if you're interested. And then one night you asked to cook dinner and you came over and you like brought me a new blender and we had like aprons, like a Superwoman aprons. You brought like basil and garlic and roses, like rose petals, and put them down. And I was like, I think he's into me. So that's kind of,
as soon as anybody comes over with any sort of small appliance,
that's it.
They're into you.
It's not the roses, it's the blender.
It's not because, you
were so sweet.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a minute to pick out a small appliance. Roses are like right there when you walk into the store.
Yeah.
You can get them anywhere.
So what did you think when you met me? I had all these kids.
That was intimidating. It was.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. Because I mean, like when I told you that, hey, I'm not looking for anything. That was the truth. I mean, I wasn't, I was a mess, and I was all, all over the place and single and all that stuff. So it wasn't something that I wanted to be nice to you because I, A, found you attractive, and B, because I wanted to be nice to you. You were not my age group. You're 5 years, what are you, 4 or 5 years younger than me?
I'm 5 years younger.
5 years younger than me. So you're a little bit younger than me. You had so many kids, though. I wouldn't have known. But
and you didn't have kids. You didn't have any at the time when we met.
Didn't have any kids at all. Never been married. So it was like one of those things where I guess that I kept coming over because it was comfortable. Like once I got used to the idea of like, well, these are her kids. This is part of the story. This is part of the thing. It's not like, you can't go in and I wouldn't have changed it, but you can't go in and change it.
Right.
So it's like embrace it or don't do anything. Don't hang out.
Yeah.
Because it's almost, for me personally, it's really hard, always has been really hard to be friends with a girl.
I would say that's probably.
So
most.
Like if I don't really, I've got a few in my life, very few. And I've met a lot of girls, very few where it's like, hey, we're actually have been and always have been, platonic friends.
Yeah.
But it's a short list. But with that said, I embraced the thing and the journey and, started getting to know the kids and all that stuff. And it was, it was something where I have to adapt. It's not you that has to adapt to, hey, I've got to conform and make sure that I'm putting out my, my best foot first when people, all that stuff. I have to adapt if I'm going to be a part of your life because yours is pretty concrete compared to mine.
Yeah.
So, but then you just start enjoying it. And now it's like I couldn't even imagine, if I had never come back over.
Yeah. Me either.
So.
Who knows how it would have been.
Yeah. I mean, it was the best decision of my life.
Oh.
For real. It really was. It was the best decision of my life was going and introducing myself. And the best other decision of my life was after we took a break was going back over and reintroducing myself.
Yeah.
And then
we dated for a little while and then we took a break.
Yeah. And I easily, and you could have easily moved. You could have easily, not just only if you moved, we would be in trouble there, but there's so many things that can happen in this life where missed opportunities and everything happens for a reason or
perfect timing.
Perfect timing. I like to think of it like that it was just, it happened when it was supposed to and for the right reasons. And so I'm happy now. So that's good.
That's so good. Well, because I think too, I've lived right across the street from you. So it's like, I don't know how our paths would have crossed other ways. And I'm grateful they did the way that they did. And, how you treat us, how you treat the kids. I do remember I'd only known you a few weeks and, the first time my kids met you, which is the first time they thought I met you. And, it was Halloween and you were like, are you guys going trick-or-treating? And I was like, yeah. And you were like, well, come over later and I'll have candy and stuff. And what I didn't know was that you went to the store and grabbed a costume and candy. I thought you always trick-or-treated. Thought you always did. I've had kids since I was 19. So I'm always out trick-or-treating. And so I wasn't until years later I found out that it was no, you went to the store and all they had left was donkey costume and you found a donkey costume in your size. And when we went over there to trick-or-treat, you were dressed up and gave the kids candy and everything. And so that was the first time my kids met you. And when we were walking down off the porch, Lexi was like, Mom, he seems really nice. And
could have gave her candy.
You did. Yep. And so that was their first time meeting you. And it wasn't until a few weeks ago that she realized that we talked about this. And she found out that wasn't the first time I'd met you. And,
she
was like, what?
What?
And so that was kind of funny.
That's funny. Yeah, but here we are, what is it, going on 6 years later?
Yeah, so it was over 5 years. So we've been married about 2.5. Out of that, we did take that little sabbatical and got back together kind of at the beginning of our relationship. And I would say like when we got back together, it was like serious. Like I would consider
like automatically.
Yeah. Like it was like, okay, well, if we're going to do this, like I'm all in.
I agree. Yeah. And it's been like that since then,
Yep.
And that's kind of cool. I mean, the greatest blessing in all that. And it's something that I try as hard as I can to be grateful for every day. But for some reason, it's just hard for me to like remember every single day to list these things to be grateful for. Probably every other day I do. But it's just like the idea of what I have now with you and the kids is it's the safest, most secure, trusting thing I've ever been involved in. And I would die before I gave this up. So it's like those, the idea of like, hey, I don't want a relationship, or hey, you have too many kids, or hey, all these things that people go through when they're limiting themselves because of someone else's circumstance and not taking it on a case-by-case basis. And it's like, man, if I had been slow to the plate, or if I had let my ego, or if I had let selfishness get involved, I would have sacrificed this, which would have been the most tremendous mistake I would ever make in my whole life. And what I have now is everything. So it's been the best 6 years of my life.
Mm-hmm. Same here. I feel like I still have, some baggage that I work through on the daily, and you're so patient. Like,
I do too. We both do.
Be sweet with me about just wounds and things. And, but it's just, I think that there's this, you don't ever know of like, if you're gonna have that like happily ever after. And it's not that we don't ever fight or anything, but I think that it's like something that even later on in life, it's really sweet that you can like find somebody and something and create a life of like, you can change your story and have great connections and have something really special.
Yeah, but when you say fight, you have to qualify that because
what, us fighting? Is that what you mean? Oh,
because
we like
when
barely,
you talk about
like banter, bicker.
Yeah, because us fighting, quote unquote, fighting is not what most people associate with fighting. It is literally like a crossword once every 3 weeks and maybe a hour and a half pouting session, whoever's pouting.
Well, normally you just get me a snack and things, or I'll get you a sandwich.
I mean, I pout too. You pout. Everybody's got to pout every now and then.
I would say 95% of it just has to do with either miscommunication or lack of food.
Yeah, so that's true. That's true.
Normally a snack fixes.
Snacks work. Snacks work for you. Snacks work for the kids. The baby.
All of us.
Everybody. Me.
Yeah.
Me.
So we have a baby now. So the big kids were about what? When we met, Christian, but
Christian was 9.
Yeah, 8. He was almost 9.
8.
He was 8. He was about to turn 9.
Yeah.
Lexi was 6 and Lola was 4.
No.
Yeah.
No. Lexi and Christian aren't 2 years apart. 3
years. So he would have had to have been 9, because she was definitely 3 when I moved and 4 when.
Okay. Yeah. Well.
Oh, this is going to get complicated.
It doesn't matter.
Anyways, they were little. It doesn't matter. They are now 14, 11. And 8.
Yeah. So I met Lola when she was 4. No, 3 turning 4.
Yep.
And then and Lexi when she was 6, Christian when he was either 8 or 9. I can't remember.
Anyways, it gets complicated. It was
they were in different
October
grades.
of 2018. So if that helps at all for a timeline for you. So we got married in March of 2021 during COVID.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful.
And then 9 months later we had a baby.
Yeah, we had her in December.
Or not 9 months. It's 9.5 months.
I don't know.
Because I think that the conception was.
You want to go over conception? I don't know when it was, but we found out. We found out we were pregnant in May, so we got married in. And we thought it was going to take us a while to get pregnant. And then just a couple months, here we are.
Yeah.
And then we had her, she came early, but we had her in December. She was 4 weeks early. So however, that timeline, it was very shortly, a month or two after we had gotten married. So
now we have this blended family. And thank God the other kids love Veda. And Veda loves the other kids. Nobody's jealous of anybody. And
which I would say you do such a good job of loving on everyone that no one
well, my dad was married 3 times and I had a stepfather, and I come from, there's a lot of dynamics.
Your dad was married. The stepfather was from the mom's side though.
What?
It made it sound like your dad married the guy. So your dad got remarried, but you had several stepmoms.
No, yeah.
Your mom got remarried several times.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, but
just clarify.
But with that said, I had a lot of experience with parents that weren't biological.
Yes.
And I had a lot of just kind of feedback, internal feedback on what worked, what was fantastic. What were things that I wish I would have gotten more of? What are things that I could have done better as a kid? All sorts of things that you just go through because you realize that these role models and the parents, at least in my life, this is just me personally, they all offered amazing things. And, and one of the things that I kind of, when you and I got involved, that I knew I was not going to know what I was doing. I knew that I had always, my whole life, shot from the hip and made a lot of bad decisions just in a lot of different ways. But I knew that I did have control over whether or not I was 100% all in their corner. I am going to be here for you no matter what. And there's a lot of trials that go into that. And a lot of times that looks different than I thought it would. But letting them know that I love them separate from you was very important to me. It was the most important thing, that separate from you, that I love them and I'll always love them, and making sure that they knew that, and they didn't know it by me just talking about it.
Right.
That every single day I wake up, they are a priority, and that is a priority. And I think that from my experiences, I had to make that decision. And then out of all the things in my life where I couldn't, if I would say, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, and I wouldn't, and I wouldn't necessarily make it something where I'm going to get up and do 100 million push-ups in the morning at 4:30 every day. Well, a lot of those things, the New Year's resolutions, I haven't done or I didn't do. But this is one thing that was so important that it never was something that wasn't going to get done. And so that, the fact is that they bring me so much joy that I owe them. I owe them a lot. So.
Well, I always joke that you should have it's crazy that you didn't have kids, because I'm he should have totally had a big family. Just such a good family man. Just put your best foot forward and go do whatever. Let the girls fix your hair. Whatever the things are. Go out and sword fight with paper towels in the yard with Christian. Whatever that looks like. But just such a good dad. And then I kind of had some fears while I was pregnant, and then as we were having Veda, of how will this change our family's dynamics, bringing a baby in, will they feel less, because it's equal, and will they feel less loved, or that Veda's more important, or that anything like that. And I think that both of our goals is that everybody in this family is important and counts, and nobody's loved more than or less than someone else. And I think that that's really important as you have a blended family as well. If you are going to have more babies, that you're okay. But the big part is that naturally you already didn't treat them any different than if they were your own. And so it hasn't made really, other than Veda has brought like so much joy and blessing and like togetherness like to our family. And I think a sort of grounding support of like security, that not just that you're, you know, I don't know, that obviously if you get married it's serious or whatever, but I think having a baby together and like us having a new baby and then being like Lola became a big sister instead of the baby and like all these things, like they get to be part of this, like she kind of like just brought us, you know, everybody closer together.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, she's been amazing so far.
So far.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's going to get bad, but she's like, no. So far, she's been, she's awesome. She's so fun and lovely, and we're blessed to have her for sure.
What has it been like having a baby? So you've never had a baby before?
You know, honestly.
I've had many.
I told you this before. I can't remember when I did, but, you know, you see these videos of people and it's like two young kids and they have a baby and they have the baby and their parents are like, hey, peace, we're out of here. And the nurse is like, here's your baby, here's the wheelchair, go home.
Yeah. And
they flip out. I had like no stress. I mean, even though you were pretty much incapacitated as far as health wise, that freaked me out a little bit.
Health was so bad.
But you are, you know, you're a 14-year NFL quarterback when it comes to having kids. So I was like, she knows the playbook. She's run the plays. She's played in the Super Bowl. She's about to retire. She has so much knowledge and all the tricks, because what it did is it made me, when I was doing things, I would know because of your reaction whether or not that was something you don't do or that's something you can do. Yeah. And when you've never had a kid before, and then the person that you're with has never had a kid before, you're both looking at each other like, is this something okay for me to do? And that, I think, can ratchet up to the point where you're such a helicopter parent that it's unhealthy. Yeah. So like the fact that I had the green light and the red light on stuff, you're like, hey, don't take her swimming at midnight. She's a week old. You know, like stuff where it's like, hey, you know, these are things that I'm not comfortable with you doing. Well, I had to trust in the fact that you'd already done this before, even though you do have some boundaries that I don't have. But I want to make you feel comfortable. So,
well, I just have like safety concerns of like people dying. Like I just have this big
safety concerns. Concerns are different than catastrophic fears.
I just get so nervous.
I know. And I get it. I totally get it.
But I probably lean more on the side of caution of like a nervous parent. I know that.
Nervous person.
Nervous person, yes. And so, and you're not. You're very carefree. You're very adventurous. And I'm very much like the pros and cons of like your risk of possibly dying.
To clarify, these are mostly not pros and cons of will we go broke? Will we get arrested? Will we, all these other, it's always physical harm.
Yes.
Like death, car wreck, drowning, fire. I mean, I could name off the list of things. I'm
so nervous.
It's not really the stuff that people normally run into over here that everybody's nervous about.
Yeah, no.
You're nervous about the things that are the nightmares of people. Yeah.
Yeah. And so with that, you know, I have to be like, I know you are going to watch them. You're going to be really good with them. But then I also am like, hey, I know you're probably going to watch them, but just a reminder, like you can't see into the lake, so you have to be sure you turn the boat off, because I am terrified that somebody's going to get chopped up.
It is like you'll put yourself in danger trying to do some sort of inspection at night before we go to bed. I might as well have a punch card time clock next to every door at the house, because I will be about to fall asleep.
Safety first.
And I have to get up and go and double and triple check we have a lot of doors in our house, every single door in our house, and then come back and give verbal confirmation to her.
I check them as well.
And she checks them as well.
So I have some hang-ups. I have some things that make me a little nervous.
But I embrace your hang-ups, and
I know you do.
I really do think they're cute. And I think I don't mind doing it. It's not like, hey, I'm like making fun of you. I'm in on the joke with you. Like, I'm like, hey, this is fun. And it makes you feel safe.
Yes,
it makes you feel good. So like I'm comfortable doing it. If it was extreme, like if you were like, hey, I'm scared somebody's stealing our mailbox and it's half a mile down the driveway, I need you to run out there in 20-degree weather. I'm like, no. Like, we need to do something like get a camera on it, or you can go out there. But I'm not running out in the middle of the blizzard to check if someone stole the mailbox tonight.
But we're so different because when you had your other house, like when we were neighbors or whatever, he never even locked his doors. Like, you lived years of how you just like come and go, free as whatever. And then I am like, I did have somebody try breaking in on me before, and I've had like traumas happen that have made me nervous. And then I have a lot of people to try and keep safe. And so, but we're totally different. Like, and that's not just in that scenario, but I would say like in a lot of scenarios, we are very different types of people. Like, you're carefree, laid back, extrovert, life of the party. You're so fun. And then but
the thing is, though, is it goes back to that thing we were talking about when we were looking for subjects, like the selective memories or whatever, and how they impact you, like traumas in your life and all that stuff. Like, I told you, I had somebody, I don't lock my car or my doors. When I was in college, I was butt naked on the toilet 6 hours after having my appendix ripped out because it had ruptured.
Yeah.
By myself, naked on the toilet, remind you. And I heard change jingling around in my roommate's room. And 3 guys had gotten into our house and they were like robbing us.
Probably because it was unlocked.
It was unlocked. And it was one of those like shared bathrooms. They sprinted right by me. I could not move. I got up off the toilet, chased them out of the back of the house, tried throwing a pot at them or something. I don't know. I mean, it was like pain. I was in pain. It was awful. But that would be very traumatic. They could have hurt me really bad. All of those things. And I don't think I locked the house the next day or the day after that or for the rest of my life. You met me
and you now are making up for it. You lock the house multiple times
I don't have any control over that.
No, because I'll be like, I'll make sure.
I really don't. I have no control over that. And there's a lot of things in my life that I have. That's what happens when you get married and you have children and, you move into this big family, is you give up a lot of the control. So you really have to find the things that are, so worth it. And then you forget about the control thing. I don't mind locking the doors.
That's good.
I mean, it's probably a normal thing to do. So it's not like I'm like, I'm overstretched doing that. But anyway, so what are you doing? What are you doing for work now?
Oh, same old things have changed since I got started in this industry. So started doing makeup tutorials about
the podcast industry.
No, makeup tutorials about 8 years ago, and now it's just, instead of just doing those, there's so many things online to try and keep up with the trends. But I'm still doing the same thing: hair, makeup tutorials, do some like design stuff with you. It's fun projects. Mm-hmm. We just finished up that summer camp. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of what I'm into. And then our first podcast.
Yeah, right.
Be sure you're liking and following if you're enjoying this. If you've made it this far into our first podcast, then I can tell we're going to really be best friends.
Yeah.
And hang out a while. But I don't know. What are you into? What are you?
Well, we're, doing the real estate thing that you helped me out a lot.
We're a good team.
Yeah, we are a good team. We help each other with whatever we can help with. And the other one kind of takes the reins with what they're really great at and good at. Maybe good is a better word, except for you. I'm on the level of good. You're at great. So yeah, just the real estate thing, and then that's really about all we're doing.
You're always putting out like fires somewhere and doing.
Well, yeah, I mean it's a lot of work to do what you and I've been doing in that space for sure, but it's super rewarding and it's something that we read an article about the summer camp we did the other day, and it was in a local magazine, and her and I were weeping like it was the cover of USA Today, because
you would have thought we were in People, because People magazine, but it was just a local publication.
We had a lot of like awesome help from a lot of people. There's a lot of people that were involved in that had a hand in it. And then you and I worked on it. And
so to fill you in, if you're new to like following us, listening to us, Adam and I, right after we had the baby, he found this property. It was an old summer camp, and a boys and girls summer camp from the 40s that had like all these small cabins on it. And it was just like kind of this, we went up and looked at it one day, and it was magical in the sense of it was falling apart, but we had like, I don't know, these Joanna Gain eyes of like how wonderful this could be. And we both were like, we should do it. And so we bought a summer camp. It's on 50 acres on the lake, and we renovated 10 cabins and all different fun themes. And that's what we've kind of worked on the last year. He worked out there every day, almost all weekends. Like, it was just a big project. And so it's available to rent. If you've never checked it out, campswan.com.
And before that, we had renovated and done, a bunch of long-term stuff that we hold on to. So it's a different ballgame when you do this short-term, like Airbnb, almost like a hotel.
Yeah.
So we'd done the long-term deal before, and then we'd had 2 short-terms. So we had all the long-term rentals, and then we had the stuff that was really small-scale stuff that had performed. And we were like, hey, this is great. Then we went after this really big project, and we actually got it done, and we didn't have to, sell our cars
or our house.
So it's like, hey, that's awesome, and it's definitely gaining traction. But we're both really proud of that. Hopefully, as we go through this podcast, you guys can help me convince Cortney that we need to jump right into something else. So that's that will be your.
This is jumping into the podcast. The podcast is something else.
Oh yeah. No, you're right.
Today is me jumping into something else. Hello, podcast. Yeah. Maybe by a few weeks you can convince me to do something else. Adam kind of loves to, be full of fun and things.
What does that mean?
Like always be busy, always be almost at the brink of stress, being great.
Because I've talked to so many people where they're. I know this sounds silly, and it's the worst way to be, but so many people that are, 75, 80, and they crave. One of them was my grandfather before he passed away. He craved the stress. Not the stress isn't the right word. I guess the energy.
Yeah, of the excitement.
Of like what's possible and like what you can get done. And oh my gosh, I can go after this. And like when you're in the middle of it, it sucks. A lot of it does. But if you do it on a project by project basis and you don't go broke doing it, and it's something that adds to your life and your world and your bank account, it's like, hey, that was, 75% of it was kind of, and then the rest of it was pretty good. But the end product, you're like, man, this
is something to be proud of.
Something to be proud of, something that, something to be proud of. And the idea of it is that if you stack those things together, then you're like, hey, this journey we're on is really cool. Our journey is awesome right now. And I agree with you that I think you take on too much too. But
we both love the excitement of new things and challenges, and it's exciting. Like, it is very exhilarating maybe.
And it can affect her and I. It doesn't compromise our relationship in any way, but we both have a lot of synergy in what we want to go after in general, usually once we have conversations about things and we kind of figure out if this is even something we want to do or is it possible. But even when we agree to do something, we still have to figure out every time we do it how to best work together and how to get it done.
Well, and how to balance, still being a good mom, still being a good husband, still being a good wife, still spending enough time with our kids, still making sure that, we can do the other job commitments that we have, all at the same time while taking on a new fun project.
Yeah.
And so sometimes there have been projects we've done where it's we get into it or do it and we're like, hey, we always keep our word and our commitment, but after like a season of it, we're like, okay, I think we pivot, and we thought this would be like a really good idea. And I like the boutique. We had a boutique for a few years, and
it was an e-commerce store.
It was like an online retail.
It was selling clothes, stuff
but
like
we
that.
evaluated like our time, what we're putting into it, and then how much we're making versus how much all the other employees we had. And like at the end of a couple of years that we were like, hey, even though we'd poured a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that, we decided to close that. Like that was a hard decision. But I think like not being the scared of failure, like sticking in something way too long because you're like, well, I don't want to be a failure, when it's like, well, noticing this is not the best use of our time, and like we're gonna like go ahead and try to get the money we have into it out and do something different. And so I'm proud of you for the way you handle that. Like a lot of times of being like, hey, it's totally, because I grew up in a thing of like, if you quit, you fail, like you never be a whatever. And you are more, I feel like, have helped me to be more open-minded to like, if we're just looking at it and it's just not working, why are we still pouring all of this energy into it? Why don't we like pivot? And like that it is okay, because we are grown-ups and you can pivot. Like you have permission to pivot if something in your life isn't going the way you want. Like, and pivot into something else you could possibly love and spend your time doing more.
Yeah. And I think that one thing that you always have to consider is, even if you have that mentality of evaluation on a 6-month basis or whatever, and then figuring out this is the finite amount of energy I have to pour into something.
Right.
And if you're spread thin already, you really have to be pretty intense with the way you scrutinize these things, that you're either going to go do it and actually do it, or, hey, we tried it, we tested it, and it wasn't something that's going to pan out. That still doesn't mean that you don't think when we leave something or we move it into something else, I could have handled that differently. There's always going to be that thing in the back of your head. If I had stuck it out, or if I had done it this way, it could have been different. So I think that the biggest thing that we can take away from stuff like that is, when you're in that process and then when it's over, is what have I learned? And then how do I implement that into the next thing that we do?
Yeah, learning from mistakes, other people's mistakes, our own mistakes.
Yeah.
Learning from those, and like trying not to
repeat it, because you're going to make another mistake.
Yeah.
Just try not to make that mistake, that new mistake, accompanied with the one you already just made.
Yep.
So like that's, and hopefully we can continue to try and do that. I don't know.
We make mistakes every day. But, I do think we're trying to make the best of them, and hopefully everybody who's following along can follow along the journey. Neither of us are too proud to not talk about like when things are fails, when things are
every day, all day,
when things are wins, and like celebrating all of those together, learning from them. So what do you want this podcast to be about?
Well, I mean, the hope is that we, today we were kind of like, hey, this is our story. This is all,
just want you guys to get to know who we are.
Yeah. So I think moving forward that, you and I've talked a little bit, we kind of want to incorporate a couple of different things. One is that we hope that, I know this is selfish, but I love it when we actually have some closed door talking time.
Yeah.
And we're not watching, 90 Day Fiance and some dude is getting weird in Colombia. Like, you know what I mean? So like.
Okay. Speaking of, we rarely watch 90 Day Fiance. Do you
know what the one I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. But do you know what we really watch is Alaskan bush people shows.
We haven't watched that in weeks.
But for years, I've watched every wilderness. I have not watched
anything that has to do with Alaska in a month.
That is a true statement, but for 5 years.
That wasn't 5 years.
Oh, it wasn't. So many. We've watched everything. It's because there's nothing else out we haven't seen about Alaska or gold.
It's personality types. I don't dominate the remote. I don't.
He doesn't.
But when it's my choice, it's almost cathartic to watch these people go out and hunt and trap and talk about their snow machines breaking down and not having power and how they get their water. And it's not something where I'm like, oh, I want to go do that. it's kind of like a soap opera for me. Like I
Yeah,
literally,
like, will
like
they get lost in the wilderness today? Will
and then
they make it home?
my girl up in Alaska, Sue, I think her name's Sue.
Yeah.
She's the one that owns the airfield.
Oh.
She's just like, she's crazy. She's
Yeah.
off. Yeah, she's insane. Anyway, I don't want to reminisce about Alaskan
TV shows?
women. Huh?
Oh, what?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, 60-year-old Alaskan women.
So many. But man, she can hunt. She can trap.
So we're, yeah. So but back to your question, I want it to be fun. I want whoever's listening, and I want you and I to have a good time doing it. I want to get phone calls in here. I want to get guests on here. I want to, in a light way, not saying what we're going to talk about isn't something that's important, but I always get the feeling when I listen to podcasts or when I'm on Instagram now that everybody is telling me I'm not doing a good enough job and that I am not up to par and that I should be doing it their way and all these things. And I'm all for advice. I'm all for mentorship. I'm all for that. But I don't want to hear it literally as soon as I wake up until I go to bed.
Right.
That's a feeling that I don't care for, as you're constantly not.
Or
no, like I'm just talking about just the way that everybody should feel if if the information they're getting is even anything close to mine, is that you're not, if you're plugged in to social media, the news, any of that stuff, that there are all these people that have this figured out and you don't.
Yeah.
And I want us to talk about stuff that's important to the people listening and it's important to us. But I also want to make sure that you and I remember and that the people listening understand that we are a work in progress and we are banging through this thing 1 hour at a time, not 1 day at a time. So it is, and I think that it's important for people to try to remember that, you take this stuff as it comes and you do your best. And that sometimes that looks like going off schedule. Sometimes that looks like, eating ice cream at 3 a.m. Sometimes that looks like so many different things because everybody's life is so different. And, I always talk about the people that are like, I get up at 4 a.m. and I drink 75 gallons of water and then I go meditate and then I'm in the lily pond for 4 hours. And then I go, whatever. I go canoeing with my group and we're best friends and we take 17 vacations every month. Yeah, my life, that's not my life. I don't do it I can't do it that way. And if I could, would I like it?
Yeah.
Would I be miserable? So,
so what do we want it to be?
What?
Not 17 lily ponds, 17 hours.
What do we
want
our life to be?
No, our podcast.
Our podcast.
What if they're going to tune in and listen to more of us? What can they expect to hear
more of us? I think we're
going to
talk about how you and I, with having opposite personalities, we have a lot of baggage from our lives previous, with a blended family, how and why we try to love each other every day and what's the reason and how we find that reason and how do we remember that reason. And then we have, even though we have a lot of home life, like we have a lot of interesting things that come up that kind of test us. And I want to, bring those things to the light in case anybody can relate to them. And if they can relate to them, maybe having us plunder our way through trying to figure it out will help them assess and address the situation they're in and give them some insight that they're not alone and we're dealing with the same types of things or something that's at least in that same, sphere. And then just laugh and tell jokes and tell stories and take phone calls about what people want to hear about. And then we're never going to be on here giving advice from on top. It's mostly, we just want to connect with people and connect with each other. So hopefully that's why they tune in, is because we're pretty real people.
Yeah, get to hear about our crazy life, what's going on, how we navigate just the day to day, being a big family, like in a modern world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
Me too.
Yeah. So, I think that I need to give out the phone number for people to call in and leave a voicemail.
Perfect. Let's close with that. If you have a call.
But I don't have it. It's on my phone.
Nice. Rookie mistake. We are going to get you a phone number.
That is, we got 15 phones going in here.
Yeah, we do have a lot of cameras going. We can record the phone number and we'll get it for you.
Yep.
Thank you for watching our first episode. We're already at 51 minutes.
I know. Watching, though.
Watching, if you're on YouTube,
you're so used to telling people watching.
They are going to be watching us on YouTube.
You think so?
Yeah, that's why we're streaming 3 cameras right now.
Oh. Witching or watching.
Watching and listening. Thank you for watching and listening.
Thanks for
to our
listening.
First full
podcast. Yeah, this is a long one. We're not
gonna be this long.
This
normally.
won't be that long. We're gonna keep it. We're gonna keep it definitely shorter and to 1 or 2 topics that are in our life at that point, and then take some phone calls. And
I would like to do at least 1 to 3 phone calls every episode. I feel like that's really fun.
I think it's fun too. I'd do it with you.
As long as people will call.
Yeah, they can't call during, but we'll play the recording.
Yes, and then we answer the questions.
And then we'll give you a shout out.
Yeah, I think it would be a blast.
I do too.
Okay, well, that's fun.
Yeah, thanks for listening, guys. And follow along with us. We have an Instagram profile.
TikTok,
we're gonna get
Instagram,
Facebook,
all
all that stuff. So it's A Couple of Swanns. A Couple of Swanns.
That's us, A Couple of Swanns.
All right. See you guys later.